If employers are refusing to pay their employees the wage that they have earned, they're supposed to have some sort of process to go through in order to recoup their back wages, some sort of legal way of doing it, some sort of government entity who has his or her back. But a 9-month investigation by Politico found that there are several states in the US and the federal government that have failed to help employees recoup the money that they have earned and deserve. So what this investigation found was that 6 states have no investigators to handle minimum wage violations, while 26 additional states have fewer than 10 investigators. Now, keep in mind that there is the federal government, okay, the Department of Labor, that can get involved and help you if you've been screwed over by your employer. However, the first line of defense is the state. There's supposed to be a governmental organization in every state that helps investigate these matters, and if you have been wrong, they're supposed to help you get that money back. Now, oftentimes that is not the way things work out. An estimated $15 billion in desperately needed income for workers with lowest wages goes instead into the pockets of shady bosses. So what often happens is it'll never get investigated at all because some states, mainly southern states, refuse to hire the employees necessary to investigate these cases. And in other states where they do have the team of people necessary to do these investigations, they don't follow through to ensure that these employers do actually pay their employees back. In some cases, the companies will just rebrand themselves, go under a completely different name, and then there's no way of enforcing these laws and making sure that they pay their employees back. Fully, 41% of the wages that employers are ordered to pay back to their workers aren't recovered, according to a Politico survey of 15 states. By the way, all states that have no minimum wage investigators are in the South, and in a 7th, Florida, former Governor Jeb Bush eliminated the State Department of Labor over a period of years in the early 2000s.
Can I just explain to people why? Why would you use state money to investigate your own donors? Corporations fund the Republican Party. The Republican Party is dominant in those southern states. They're like, you didn't give me, you working at minimum wage, did you send your lobbyists to me to give me gifts? Did you give me campaign donations? Did you give me dark money? No, your employer did. So of course I represent them and not you. I'm gonna let them rob you blind. Look, on a national scale, the Republicans invented a scandal about the IRS. Now, at the end of the day, when they did the investigation, they found out the IRS actually investigated liberal groups slightly more than conservative groups. But by that time, they'd gotten all this press attention, and no one even remembers that the final conclusion was that they were actually targeted liberals more than conservatives. If you mention the so-called IRS scandal now, everybody would be like, oh yeah, the IRS targeting conservatives. So why did they do that? Why did the Republicans invent that fake scandal? Because their donors are the ones that don't pay their taxes the most. So they don't want them investigated. So they want to neuter the IRS. They want to make sure they have as little money as possible so that their donors can cheat on their taxes. In this case, they're allowing the corporations to cheat in not paying you. Well, if you have a system based on private financing of elections, of course they're going to work for private interests. What did you expect?
But it's actually a lot worse than that, because some of these companies are not massive corporations with big names that we all know of. In fact, those corporations, the ones that typically are the big donors for the Republican Party, have a lot more to lose if they are screwing over their employees, right? That's when the federal government might get involved, and they typically are not the corporations who do this type of shady dealing with their employees. It's usually the small bean companies that get away with it because they can easily rebrand themselves, dissolve their company or corporation, and then create a new one under a different name, and then it becomes impossible to enforce, whatever ruling has been made in these wage cases.
But Anna, it's also a mindset, right? So it's impossible to enforce if you don't want to enforce.
No, that's where I was getting to, Cenk. That's where I was getting to. My point is, it's even worse than what you thought, because the Republican lawmakers in these states don't care. They don't care. They don't care about your minimum wage. They don't care that you've been screwed over by your employers. They don't want want to use the resources necessary to hire the investigators and do the investigations to get you the money that you earned. It's worse. It's worse than, the corporations paying off the politicians. It's basically politicians saying, no, I'm not going to use taxpayer money to help actual taxpayers get their money back. Because look,
what we're saying winds up at the same result, which is they've been trained over all these years to only care about the donors. So they've forgotten that they're supposed to represent you. They're literally called your representatives. And they couldn't care less about you. And when Republicans look, and again, corporate Democrats do this too. They don't do it at the scale of the Republicans. They don't do it nearly as successfully as the Republicans. But when they take money, they also serve their masters, okay? But when the Republicans, who are now become so corrupted, turn around and pretend they're for the average guy. We know the facts. We do the news every day. We deliver the news to you every day. This is a giant investigation by Politico, looking at all these different things. They didn't make it up. They immaculately looked to see who was actually getting paid their wages. And the people on the other end, they're not bums. What do the Republicans love to say about the average guy? Bums. They won't work. We just throw bootstraps at them. Why don't they just pick themselves up, right? These are people who are working by definition, working their asses off. And they get minimum wage, and then their employer screws them, and the government says, me help you. No, I'm not here to help you. I'm here to help my donors. They've completely forgotten that they're supposed to serve you.
These are employees who work in the restaurant industry, they work in landscaping, they work for cleaning companies. These are the people in the country, these are the working poor who are already getting screwed by a system that's rigged against them. And then you have several states in the US that don't even want to hire the investigators necessary to protect them. I mean, we see what's happening with the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau, right? The federal government doesn't care for that. They don't want anyone to protect the actual consumers. Why would they? And on a state level, it gets even worse. So let's take a look at the states. 2 states, Kansas and Iowa, put a monetary ceiling on wage theft cases they'll pursue. As a matter of policy, these states decline to pursue enforcement actions if the amount involved is too high. In Kansas, the ceiling is $10,000. In Iowa, $5,000. Why? Why would you put a ceiling there? So if someone got screwed over by their employer to the tune of $25,000, you're just not going to investigate that case by policy?
So you got screwed over worse, so we're going to make sure we definitely don't help you.
Okay, Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Mississippi all have labor agencies, but workers can't file minimum wage or overtime claims with them, meaning that they will not investigate issues involving wage theft.
Because they represent the robbers. Look, we're for, you know what regulators are in this case? They're the cops. They're making sure that they literally, the other guys don't steal from you. It's stealing from you just as much as if picking your pocket. If they don't pay you $1,000 that you earned in minimum wage or overtime, it's like they came to your house and took $1,000 out of your drawer. But there are no cops to help you because the Republicans fired all the cops. Because they represent the robbers. And I say Republicans because these are all Republican-run states. If you think they're for the average guy, you ought to have your head examined.
Finally, if you go to state lawmakers and they don't help you out with this, of course you can go to the federal government and hopefully they can help out. Now that is a long and difficult process. There's no guarantee that the federal government will even look into your case. But if they do look into your case, and best case scenario, they rule in your favor, they can only recoup what the federal minimum wage is. So if you are in a state where the minimum wage is higher than the federal minimum wage of $7.25, you're still going to lose a ton of money because they can only get you back $7.25 per hour that you worked.
And that is if you had a federal government who gave a damn about you.
That's right, and right now you don't.
If you become a member of the Young Turks, you'll be saying,
I'm like a smart person.
So do it right now, tytnetwork.com/join. Get the whole Young Turks show every day.